Hi, it's Pete the Bumbling Modeler back again. So we ended up with the engine just about ready to pop into the frame. It's painted, it's lightly weathered, and I've made that little stand just so it doesn't get scratched. I've got a feeling it's going to sit around for a few weeks before we get to this. So today it's really cleaning up the frame and preparing the parts for that. So I said in the last video that the frame is a little bit awkward because there's no location point, so I think we'll end up, in theory you can glue the frame together, then pop the engine in. I think what I'm going to try and do is glue this very front of the frame together, because that's a bit where you end up with an ugly split, so we can get that done and filled, and then hopefully there's enough flex in the rest of it to pop the engine in, and then join it all up when the engine's in there. So that's probably the way I'm going to go about it. So that'll need painting black. The swing arm at the back has got a slit ready for the chain to go in, so you'll never see that when the model's built. So we can assemble two halves of this and glue those together and let them set up, so when we're spraying the frame we can spray this. Now this lower bit is all a metallic silver, and looking at the various photos of the bike in various stages, it would appear it used to have two shock absorbers at the back, and this is a mid-season alteration where they bolted on this subframe, put a single shock absorber in, presumably to increase its competitiveness. I don't know, but this whole section here is gloss black, so I think once it's all together we'll spray the lot gloss black and then just mask off the subframe and spray the rest of it an aluminium colour, and then chuck a few bolts in, little bolt head there where that frame's bolted on, just so it gives it a reason to be there, because it looks a bit odd the way it's done now. It is a bolt-on option. And while we're doing it, we might as well get the shock absorber ready, because that'll be an aluminium colour, and this part of the subframe glues in. How's it glue in? It's a Tamiya one, so it'll probably only go one way because they're good like that. I think it glues in, yeah, like this. So that'll have to go in there and be de-seamed before we go much further. Okay, so that's basically how that swing arm will fit together. So the first thing is we have to clean it up. So the tools I'll be using for that is my trusty side cutters to get rid of sort of the little nibs here that I'm not sure if that is part of the frame or something we need to cut off, and I can't really find out at the moment. I'll have to look. So we'll be using those as usual, sanding sticks, needle file. But the one thing you haven't seen me use before, I've got two different types, is a scraper, and it's just a high-speed steel tool with it's not a sharp edge, it's a 90-degree edge. It'll just scrape away at seams. So where I use this is where you get this seam line down the center of a tube. If you sand it, you can lose shape quite quickly. With these, you just lightly drag it over and it'll take away all the high points. There's a little nib there we need to get off with a bit of sanding stick first. It won't take big chunk. If you try and take a big chunk off, it'll just sort of dig in front and behind a bit. So you just get it down to the seams and you lightly scrape it along. You end up with a nice round finish on that tube with no ridge down the middle of it. So the first job will be going around all of the frames like that, and it seems a bit long-winded, but it is quite relaxing to do. And if I'm honest, if you try and scrape with a scalpel, you get a lot of juddering and chattering, because this is a really stiff blade. If you don't dig it in, it will just lightly take off the surface and you won't get any cleanup. For the slightest of cleanups, I've got a sanding sponge which is quite soft, so we can just, this one's a bit new and a bit vicious actually. but you'll just blend everything in when we're done. And what I'll probably do, actually, because I can, that's quite a long sanding stick. I'm going to use a little bit at the end, so I might as well cut it in half. So I'm only going to use the end of it. This is where I cut my finger off on camera. I'm only going to use the end of it. I've now got 4 ends. It just makes it a little bit more efficient that way, because you tend to hold it and you use that little bit. The percent of it never gets used. So if you get a sanding stick and you don't need the full length, that's a better way to treat it. So I'll start by cleaning up all these seams. Then we'll go back in camera and look at other bits like this ridge underneath here to see what we have to do to get rid of that, because clearly that'd just be a flat plate on the bike. So I'll be back in seconds for you. I keep on saying that and forgetting that time has no meaning on a video, but I'll be about half an hour cleaning up. So see you in a minute. Okay, so they're as cleaned up as they need to be, making sure I'm on camera. So yeah, I mean, that would have been the worst offender where we had that large bracket for the suspension system. These little areas where we've got the coils on, too bad, because we're going to be hard up against those anyway, so any sort of irregularities should be hidden. So the next thing is going to be gluing this together, and I say it's going to be a bit of a nightmare, I think, because there's no location at all, and yeah, it's quite a focal point in the bike. And the other thing is, on these areas here, there's a little ridge there that needs cleaning up. Now, I didn't do that when the frames were in pieces, because this whole area needs to blend, and it might be we go flat right across the top and then put a little disc of plastic on there to simulate that flange. That might be the neatest way to clean it. But all around this area and around this front is, if we display it without a fairing, is the bit you're going to see. So to get this together, I'll be using the Rebel contact here, because it's a slower set and a deeper bond than the extra thin, to be honest. So we're only going to glue this headstock together, clamp her all up as best we can, then leave it. Then we've got plenty of wiggle room here and twist to get the engine in. I don't think it'll need that much, but there will be enough to do it. So I think I've pontificated about it, but I think get this done, then it can be setting where everything else is cleaned up, which is just a similar task. So just get this flowing. It'll eventually eat itself and come out of the tube because it's a hot glue. So it's a case of, I'm not worried about being too careful on making this pretty. I just want a lot of it on and fast. The more that oozes out in some ways, the better for us, because it's going to be its own filler. So we've got quite a lot of it on there. We're going to hike these two together and hold them until they start to bite a little bit. Now the most relevant tube to join up is this one across the bottom. So I think what I'm going to do is get a bulldog clip, alligator clip. Wrong species bulldog. Right, this one, trying to do it on camera, it's easy off camera. This one's nice and stiff, so that'll clamp that tube there, so we know that's not going to come apart. We can wiggle that till we get a good bit of ooze out the front. I need to line up that hole there, because there's a tube that goes in that holds the fairing. At the same time, this hole is once you lined up now, and I tried that drill bit before and it's about right to go in there, so I'm going to leave that in there. Doesn't matter if we get a gap at the front. So that should line up that hole. This tube's being lined up by the alligator clip. These bits of frame will ping together when the engine's in, and we'll just tack them together with a bit of super glue because there's no stress on that. And you won't see them, so we don't need to de-seam that. This one we'll have to polish up. And once it's all set, we can come across the bottom and clean that area up. this little bit needs cleaning. That's all right. This front will need a good old polish up. But we can say with this stuff being more of a resin than the plastic welded one, we'll just lay it on with a trowel inside here as well, which isn't recommended by the manufacturer. But that bit you're never going to see, so that'll eat into that and hold it. And we should have a nice firm joint there. Now, I've got to resist all temptations over the next day or so and not touch that. So I'm going to literally leave it a few days like that. Any marks on this tube from the alligator clip will be easy enough to sort out with a bit of Mr. Surfacer as a filler. So that frame is together as we want it. So next time you see it, we'll be cleaning up all this area, making sure it's all seam free. And as I say, that can take quite a while for the glue to go off. And I can't really use a super glue and talc on that one because I will be flexing it later on. So that's gonna, super glue is a bit too brittle, which is a shame because I'd rather just get this filled and done. This could end up sitting here for weeks, so we can get rid of that seam. Or I may spring the engine in and then use the super glue method. Once we've finished flexing it, then give it a light overspray. So that, while that's doing, we can start to look at these bits now. I don't know if you can pick that up on camera. This arm coming down here has got the rough finish you get when it's, I wonder if we can get it to focus. Yeah, it's got that rough finish you'll get. And that's when I realised I didn't have the microphone where I wanted it. So we'll probably end up talking over this video and editing it, so the sound will get a bit funny now. Pick the mic up. Sorry about that. You think you're prepared for everything, and yeah, I took that off earlier on. So going back to this, we've got that, if it picks up, that rough finish straight from a milling machine in the tooling, so that'll stand up underneath the aluminium finish we're going to put on here. And there's little ridges. I suspect this swinging arm has been modified from a different version of the bike because these bits aren't the same quality as bit. It looks like they've been added on. So what, I'll throw myself by having a mic. This bit here, we just need to go on needle file and just gently, I'm using the file because I know it's flat, just gently try and get rid of all of those marks left by the tool maker. And when you get this dull finish all over, you know you've got the worst of it out. Then we can get one of our sanding sponges and just lightly polish that. Then I've got this polishing stick I was using the other week. Just come in there, I'm going to give it a polish. And the finish, sorry about that, to go quickly, there was someone was calling me. So you want the finish on this to look broadly similar to what you get on this arm itself. Now if you look at it in certain lights, you're getting sink marks here where the plastic shrunk back, and that's because there's big blob of plastic behind it. So we might get away with sanding that out, or we may need to fill that. It's too early to say yet, but we'll try sanding out. Seems to be working. I'm not going to go crazy on this till it's glued together, so I'll be taking off the obvious little sprue gates. There's another little one there. I'll whip them off now, but I really need this together to sand it and finish it, because where things join up, you'll get little steps and ridges, so it's just a case of getting the worst of it off whilst you can. Yeah, I'll probably not end up filling that because it's not going to be a polished aluminium on this. It's going to be a matte aluminium, so that's not going to stand up. It will when the gloss is on, but it's all but disappeared now. So rather than muck about too much with filler, so we'll leave all these seams on for now because we can clean these once the thing's all bonded. I think from my point of view, because I only really get normally Wednesdays to do this, I'm better off getting it glued now and worrying about de-seaming it later on. So that hasn't got the sink mark on that one. How strange. De-seaming it later on, so it's got a good week for the glue to set. So this little fella is probably good to go. If I snip that off. Let's get everything together then, call it a day. And then I might have to do a voiceover. So I forgot to clip the mic on earlier on, sorry. So the sound's probably, if I can get away with the sound, I'll keep it, because it seems a bit odd talking out of context sometimes. How does this fella fit? Oh, okay, so it goes in there. This way up. In there on the bottom half. So yeah, we're going to have things like gaps on that tube, so it would be far better off cleaning this up when it's all together. So again, I'll use a contactor and allow for the oozage out of that, just to really give these a strong bond, because you can file through the Tamiya stuff a little bit too easily. In this case, it's all being cleaned up. A bit of overkill doesn't really matter with the glue. Ooh. So that's it. Oh, sorry, it's right off camera then, wasn't I? I need to remember. So that's there, that's set up. That's got a bit of a ridge we need to get rid of. Just quickly. Again, this will have to be all super glued up. Normally you can't put the swinging arm together this early on, but because you've got that gap for the chain, we say you can't. I tend to split the chain on a model bike. It has a massive ejector point there that'll hold it all off. Yeah, if you split the chain, you can get on, and you never see the chain split anyway. But on this one, it's given us a split swinging arm. And I might do something a little bit different with the chain on this one. We shall see. So nothing else that's holding that apart. So theoretically, didn't check on that side, did I? But that's why we're lucky we've got a file, because it's thin enough to get in there. Just take that little ridge off. So blobber glue there, blobber glue there, wang a load on there. That's all together-ish. Makes quite a complicated shape actually when you're done, doesn't it? It's quite like it. Let's try and line that by eye as best we can. It's a million miles out. You know, I said always about dry fitting. You should always dry fit, because that's awful. That's probably closer. Then we're a mile out the top, aren't we? So, probably not too bad. We'll need to put some filler down there, which will probably be the super glue one actually. Ooh, yeah, maybe don't be too rough with it till it's set either. It'll be all right. It's only a bit of plastic after all. Yeah, okay. Your head magnifier on so you can see what's going on. I might go off camera or you might see me head. One of the two, but we've got to get this lined up nice and tightly. Yeah, yeah. She's in enough anyway. And this top seems to line up better now, so we'll just ooze a bit of ooze. Really lay it on with a trowel, a bit of contact because we're cleaning all this up anyway, so let's get it in there and make sure we've got enough to hold it when we're cleaning. This isn't a conventional way of doing it, but it works. If we weren't going to have to file the living daylights out of this, I'd be using a different method, but I really don't. You know, that everything's quite easy to get to, so you can get to that flat top there to get that bit off. You can get to that bit of tube, okay. This front you can get to do there, and we can get in that gap and tidy that up. So I'd rather it was really solid with a deep bond than neat at this moment in time, because the neatness we can get to later on. So everything seems to be how we'd want it now. This little bit does seem to spring apart, but if I hold that for a minute or two. So yeah, next time you see it, we'll be cleaning up and putting in primer to see what it looks like. And you know, the cleaning up will be just the usual, me with a sanding stick scraping away at things. It's nothing going to be that exciting. This bit you're not going to see, so we won't have to file it. So on this bit we can tack it together with a bit of that stuff. I'm going to say this, the whole upper area is black, the lower swing arm silver, and obviously the calipers are different colour and the bolts and things, but we'll worry about that later on. So once that's set, same as the frame, we can really go to town with the cleaning, and it's not going to spring apart now, I don't think. So we're we're just about finished for the night. There's one other little bit that's needs to be looked at, but I won't do that on camera. I don't really need to. It's just we need to get the seams off this shock absorber. Then this little plate fits in here, and there's a spring, actual real spring that goes in it. So must only fit in a certain angle, probably a flat spot on it, but nice and tight in there for now for what we want. So I'll clean that up later on. So when we're spraying the primer on, we'll prime this at the same part, and then there's a little bit of pipe that comes out there that goes to that reservoir we made. So I'll try and drill that out if I can. It's a bit fine and fiddly to get a bit of wire in there as we have on the other ones. So for now, that's it. It's just a waiting game now to make sure everything sets up okay. Which, if you look at this, it is doing now. It's starting to get quite solid. I won't tempt fate by moving it too much, but yeah, we've got our cleaning up to do, but we knew that. Swing arms all lining up okay by the look of it. If you look through various holes, you line up the ones on the other side, and it's not a car, so it doesn't matter if it's an angle. The wheel's still going to sit on the ground, isn't it? So once it's all dry, we need to clean up all the seams, clean up all these glue lines, look for sink marks like we've done on there all over it. I need to find out these little lugs are meant to, well, I've cut the one off the other side, so we'll say they're not. Solve that problem. And always put on if I need them. And there's things like this ejector pin mark. You might see that because the tire's quite far forward, so we'll lob little bits of super glue in that and then file those back. These ones at the back you're not going to see, but this one at the front you may do. So we need to take care of that sort of thing. But all that will be shown a bit later on in this video. So Right, we're back again, and the setup's changed a bit since you've last seen it. So I put a new camera angle on, and I quite like the angle because it's not just looking down at plan. You get a bit of an oblique view. But I realised a lot of the stuff I was doing was off camera, so I'll not show everything I've done leading to this point. But we got the swinging arm together, and there's a few sync marks you can just make out. A little one there, which I've got rid of most of it with a sanding stick. So basically I've just glued these together and I've started to clean up the joint. So this edge here will need cleaning up because it's a bit wonky. We'll need a bit of fill around this tube here just to tidy that up and then polish that back. The engine does fit in the frame. I can still take it out for spraying. It's only held on at the front, as I said before, so we just got to clean up this front edge there, clean up the underneath to get rid of that seam, but that was easier to do when it's together. And if we take too much off, we can always put a disc of plastic on there to reinstate that length there. So the frame and the swinging arm are almost ready to go in primer. But while I'm priming, I want to get the fairing done, so I need to drill out these little bolt holes that exist all over it before I prime. So what I'll do is probably put a quick coat of paint on something so they stand out, flash them over with a file to flatten them off, and then put little dents in, drill through. You've seen that sort of stuff before. The seat on the real thing, these little spigots here are aluminium, and I think I'm probably going to cut these off and put an aluminium piece on, but I'll cut them off now, so it kind of forces me to do that. Otherwise I'll take the easy option, but painting those a silvery colour isn't ever going to look right. It needs that aluminium. Bit of coffee spilt on it. So I've got my lathe in front of me, and the reason for that is the petrol tank. So it's this filler cap here I don't like. It's accurate actually, the real ones are just bonded on, but a lot of the racing ones have got 8 bolts holding them on, and I think even though it's not strictly speaking accurate, the 8 bolts are going to look better because that whole area looks a bit bland. But to drill something exactly, it's 30 degrees apart for 8 bolts. 8. I'll do the maths later on, but you only need to have one fraction out and it's going to look like an absolute dog's dinner. So what I was going to do is I've got, well, this little bit of aluminium here, which is slightly larger than that filler cap. So I was going to face it off and counterbore it so it just sits nicely over that cap there. Go, Danny. Okay, so I'm going to get this bit of aluminium. I'm going to counterbore it, drill it as a jig, drop the jig on, spot through all the holes. They'll be equally spaced and a pitch circle diameter around that flange, and it should look neat. And if it doesn't look neat, then I'll find a way of bluffing it. But if it doesn't look neat on that, I probably won't go right through. But I think having those little bolt holes in there will make a big difference to the tank and just add some visual appeal on what will otherwise be a bland feature. So I'm going to put this in the lathe and start mucking about. So I won't be talking and the noise will be a bit irritating, so we'll probably go silent when we do this on the video, but let's give it a go and see what happens. I'll just switch off while I set everything up. Okay, so I'll just do one pass on this so you can see what I'm doing. I think the noise is going to overpower the video anyway, but we've got it set up. I've got it nice and snug in the chuck. Maybe not snug enough. You're getting a lot of chatter and vibration on this. If you're interested, it's a Unimat. What do you call them? ML modular lathe thing. It's cool tool. That's the word I was looking for. And okay, it's not the best lathe in the world, but I normally use it when I'm working on plastic and making jigs for models and things. And it was an extravagant buy. It started off as the really flimsy plastic one, and I've added all the aluminium bits to it over the years. So it probably cost me an arm and a leg if I add it all up. But because I've done it over a period of time, it hasn't been that costly. Would I recommend going out and buying one? Maybe, but I've modified it so I've got a separate drilling and milling machine now, so I can keep this permanently set up. This bed is filled full of concrete to give a bit of weight and heft, otherwise it moves around too much. These aluminium brackets are to give it a bit more support. I've had to put the back gear on it, so you have to do a lot of modifying to make it work, but it will turn aluminium reasonably well now, and I normally use a safer perspex and things, so for making this little jig it's ideal. So I'll just run the tool across the face so we can see how it goes, and then I'll explain what I'm going to do and then just get it done off camera. Okay, so that's one side faced off. It sounded worse than it is. The finish isn't too bad actually. It sounded really chattery, but it's just the harmonics of the machine more than anything else. The actual finish is reasonable. It is chattery, but it'll do for what we're doing. So I have to face off the other side. Then I have to centre drill it and drill right through. So I've got a reference hole for the centre on my milling machine. Then I can set up the milling machine without an edge file drill and just put a mandrel in the chuck, drop it down through that centre hole, and then move out to the pitch circle. But I'll show you that when I do that. So what I'll do now is face off this side, drill it through, bore it, and then we'll set up the milling machine and you'll see what I'm going to do on that. So I'll switch off while I do these next operations because it's just a bit of a noise really that you don't need to hear. Okay, so that's the end of the noisy stuff. So what I've got is ignoring all the chatter marks, I didn't bother setting up a boring bar, I just wanged it in with a parting off tool. But I've got a little button now with a recess in it, and that recess sits on that fuel cap and locks in pretty positively. And just for my own mind to check, I just dropped the drill down the centre and it goes dead centre of that. So what the next job will be is to set this up on a milling machine, quarter it, and then use a bit of trig to get the angle in between those. I can centre it up on the dot I've drilled through, drill some holes through, and we can super glue this into place or PVA it in and drill through this jig then and get those holes perfectly round that little rim there without any deviation, because any sort of slight angular squiffiness would look silly. So that's in theory what we're going to do. In practice, let's see how it works out. If I think it's going to go horribly wrong, this has all been a waste of time, except it's filled in an evening and it's reawakened some interest in some other models I've got. So I'll switch this off now, then come back when the milling machine's set up, and we'll jig bore the holes to put the bolts in the top. Okay, so we'll be back in a minute. Okay, so this is going to be the final push on this video, which has been a bit waffly and self-indulgent. So we made this little aluminium cap that fits over the petrol tank on the fuel cap on the petrol tank, and the reason for that is I wanted to drill a series of holes around there, as I say, so I could drop little bolt heads in there so it looks like that's screwed on. So off camera, I've got a little mill drill here, so clamp everything in the vise, and I can move things around an X and a Y axis, so I can make sure holes are at 90 degrees, then use a bit of trig to get the intermediate ones, and then I can drill 8 holes around that, and it's relatively neat. This one looks a little bit oversized, and yeah, I'll live with that. And this one was in the wrong place, so I plugged it with a bit of styrene rod. It's not still there anymore. Then filed it off and re-drilled it, but it was a lot of work in theory to make that. But in practice, although they're not perfect, they're a lot more perfect than would have been if I'd done it freehand. So it was worth the effort doing it. Ideally, I would have made that out of a bit of perspex, because my little lathe does struggle with metals. But I had a bit of aluminium lying around and did a bit of perspex. It's that simple. So yeah, a lot of effort to do it. But I think overall, once the bolt heads are in that, the effect will be worth the time we've spent. Get that out of the way. Find a place for that to live. So really what we need to do now is get this thing ready for primer. So in advance of that, everywhere where there was a little bolt cast or rivet cast into here, where's my little probe? I've filed that smooth and drilled them out. There's one there, one there. They're only a small hole to mark the location, but I want to get quite a nice paint finish on this, because these were the sort of top class of motorsport in the day, so they wouldn't have been that tatty. And if you've got something sticking up, it'll either wear through the paint when you're polishing it back, or you won't be able to polish that area and it won't match the rest of it. So it's easier to take them off right from the word go and reinstate them later on. So I've done that with that. Seat, I was in 2 miles of it to do it, but it has these little aluminium posts that are quite prominent on the real bike, which hold the seat on. And again, I wouldn't be able to polish around them, and I wouldn't be able to spray them a convincing aluminium colour without destroying it. So all I did was mark the centre, and it doesn't have to be absolutely spot on, because you're not going to look at both sides at the same time. Picked up my little drill. I went a bit off camera there, my line up, centered that up. We'll drill right through that, making sure I don't drill into my finger. That's my compressor starting in the background. Sorry, I should have switched off. The drill's slipping at me pin voice. Get this out. Sorry. I'm getting used to doing it on camera. I like this camera angle. It's a bit oblique, so you're not just looking at a plan view, but I'm having trouble making sure I stay in focus. So we drill through that. We got our side cutters. These aren't my usual Tamiya ones. These were meant to be a more expensive pair, but I prefer my Tamiya ones. But they're in another room where I was doing something in front of the telly last night. Snip that off. Get a sanding stick that's not too coarse. Polish that back down. use a polishing stick just to get the last bits off. And then that's done, and when we paint this, we can polish all this seat without having to worry about snagging on that. So it's that sort of thing to finish off. What I have done as well, slightly off camera, is I noted dimensions of that pin, so I can put that in the project box I've got, so I know the dimensions when I come to put it back on, and I've also got photos because I've been videoing it, so I'll be able to get something that looks about right. So the main thing now is to get this thing ready for primer. These bits are all ready-ish. You'll probably need a bit of sanding once the primer's on there. That's always the nature of these things, but painting's all about the prep after all. It's not about the finish. Let's get rid of the stuff we're not going to use so we don't lose it. You live here. You can live back there for now. So, the swing arm, I've gone over it with a scraper and polished it up. It's mainly ready for primer. There's probably a little bit there that needs a bit of a tweak. So mainly scraped it rather than this one because it's quite delicate rather than sanding it. Just get rid of all the seams. This will all be gloss black. The actual swinging arm here is going to be bright aluminium, but this frame off it's a gloss black, so I do the lot in gloss black. Oops. And this way you have to check and check again. There's I thought that was part of the actual model. It's not. It's part of the sprue gates, so they need to come off. Oh, I'll just put down a sanding stick. A nightmare for that, I'll be honest. Use that one. Need to give this a little bit of it shine up so we don't get any. And I've just knocked the camera, sorry. I'll have to look at altering the positioning of my head. Now I've got this. So we just want to get these. You don't know what you're going to see on this and what you're not. It's not till you assemble it. That's why it's a bit of a pain in the bum, to be honest. So that's got that seam out of it. There's an edge here that's a bit wibbly wobbly, so what I'll do is get a bit of masking tape as a guide. Again, I'm not sure you'll be able to see that far into it for this to be an issue, but I don't want to spend hours painting and priming to find out the one bit of mist is the one bit you actually see. So if we were to put something, sorry, I probably want to love camera there. Yeah, I have. Yeah, we were to put something across there till we get it roughly parallel with that edge. We've got a little guide there, and then grab a scalpel and gently carve up to that edge along the tape. I might have to do this off camera because I keep knocking the tripod and my eyes aren't close enough to see what I'm doing. Gently bring that back till it's parallel. And that's the worst of it off by the look of it. And then somewhere here I've got a flat file. And just get in there and just bring it back to the tape, and we should lose that. wavy line we've had in there. Hang on a minute, I'll go off camera while I just check. Well, classing that as not perfect, but better. But the trick with that is always go up to your line. Don't try and do it in fresh air and hope to get it straight at first. So apart from that corner there, we're a lot straight across there. We've lost that sort of scalloped edge it had on it, so that's all right. That's tidied up. So there's other bits we need to be concerned about. So I've got some ejector pin marks here, and it's quite an open structure on the wheel, so probably need to fill those. I put the engine in the frame, I don't know if I said last time, just to hold it all together. But on this front, we've polished and cleaned up this front face because it's quite visible. That edge there we need to tidy up, but the underside of here is still a bit of a bogging mess, so we need to do a bit of filling there, and there's a little gap there that you'll probably see when it's finished. So first of all, let's try and tease the engine out so we don't get anything on that, because we're quite happy with the finish on that. I should have put that generator in later, actually. Pop that there later and put it in the stand. So we've got to fill this area, fill a little dot there, and tidy up this front face. Well, again, we know how to tidy up that front face. Just did that, so it's just a case of get a masking tape. So we've got a line to work to. I'll be off camera for a second. So that bit of tape's lining up with those two lugs there. So all we need to do is get rid of the excess along this edge. I mean, probably do all of that with a file, to be honest. But these little things, straightening things up and tidying things up, that make quite a big difference when you look at the finished model. So quite a bit to go on that, so I might try whittling it down a little bit first. I'll just be off camera a second so I can see what I'm doing. Give him a little tidy up. Not perfect, but it's a lot straighter than it was. We've lost that little bit of a step. I'll probably go with that, to be honest. Could do with a bit more dressing, but it's way better than it was. This little thing here, the steering yoke sits on that, so I'm going to leave that as a slight raised ridge because that might give it the tension it needs to. Missed a bit there. You're always going to find bits you miss. That's why you're going to prime it, to be honest, because that'll highlight all of this. But in general, frame ready apart from a little bit of filling. So filling, again, it's going to be a super glue and talc job because life's too short. So this mysterious white powder here is Johnson's baby powder. It's the old one that is a genuine talc, so it does work as a filler. Let's get my head magnifier out. Makes it a bit super. The idea of the super glue is it makes a whole lot softer. If you just have super glue, it's so much harder than the plastic. You your sanding tools tend to bounce off the super glue and dig into the plastic on either side. So rather than mend a ridge, you end up with a raised ridge. So you just mix all your talc in now so it's homogeneous, so you don't have any soft pockets in it. And this will act as a retardant to stop it setting quite as quick. But it'll also, so make it a far softer and nicer smelling medium. So with that, we look at the areas we've got a bit around here. We need a bit of filler on, so I'll just blob that on there. Probably do this again with the magnifier on, to be honest. I can't really work with that on camera. Fill those little ridges there because that is quite a prominent area. That gap so you can get the chain on, so we're going to have to live with that. There might be something a little bit around here. It doesn't matter because we can get off what we don't need. So you're done. This top bit's okay. That the shock absorber is going to clip on that, so you're never going to see that. And we've got my fingers in the super glue. Watch out for that one. Won't be the first or last time I've done that. There's a little bit of an ugly seam there, so put a bit on that. A lot of that will be hidden by the shock absorber, but the one bit we miss won't be. We need to go a bit underneath here in case someone picks up the model from underneath, just to give that a bit of a fill and get the chance of me not having to do this again once it's being primed are quite slim, so be a bit slapdash. Fill up that ejector pin mark there. Fill up that ejector pin mark there. Definitely fill that one. So the wheel's got 3 spokes from memory. I'll have to look at the drawing. It's quite an open structure, so they will stand out like a sore thumb if you get a nice finish on it. So we'll just dab a bit in there. So that's ready for a bit more prep. We've got this area under the frame here, which is quite ugly. We don't put a lot in that because it doesn't shrink. And the more we're filing off, the more we're likely to damage it. But we do want to make sure we've got a nice level plate underneath here. So we'll just whack a load in. That's given us plenty to remove, which is going to be a bit of a pain, but we should be able to do that in one fill because I want to get this in primer today, as I say. That bit of a frame around there you might see. This is all going to be glued together when it's on, so that's basically done. You're not going to see down there, I'm going to say. Oh, there's a little bit on the front, wasn't there? Yeah, that's right. So a little bit here. Smallest of slots there, which again, we don't think we'll see, but we probably will if we don't do it. So we'll just put a bit on top of that tube there. Right, and that's where we are. We need a bit of sanding to get everything smooth and whack into primer. So I'll probably end this video now, do a lot of editing because there's so much waffle in this. Sorry, I've just been, so it's just self-indulgent twaddle a lot of it, showing how I do things. So we'll get those primed. We'll get the frames elements sprayed black so we can get the engine permanently in there. So next time you see it, that'll be black with the engine in it. Swinging arm will be well on the way to being done. The shock absorber, which is living here, will be painted with a spring on it. Engine in frame. These will be in, they'll probably still be in a primer. I'm going to experiment with it. I've seen a colour scheme I quite like, which I think might be possible to reproduce rather than just a plain white. I'm not going to bother with the sink marks inside here because that's quite close fitting to the bike, and I think I was unsure whether to have the fairing alongside it and the bike naked, but I think I'll do it with the fairing on because I'm never going to look at it once it's built, and it'll just gather dust. So they'll all be in primer, and then we'll do a video how I'm going to spray those with this colour scheme without using decals. So I'm about to sneeze. I'll just pinch it out so I don't. So we'll call that one a day. I'll edit this one up, and then say next time you see it, we'll be a lot further down the road with things painted, ready to go. And hopefully we can rattle through this quite quickly now, because I'm conscious I'm taking hours doing anything. So thanks for watching, and see you soon. Bye.